Introduction. The rule was absolute in the Moretti household. Never call the private line unless blood had been spilled or the house was burning down. Lorenzo Moretti didn't tolerate interruptions. Not during business, not during territorial negotiations, and especially not during the fragile peace treaty he was brokering with Dmitry Volkov and the Russian Bratva in a smoke-filled cigar lounge, where one wrong word could restart a war that had already cost 43 lives. So when his phone vibrated during the most critical moment of negotiation, right as Volkov's hand moved toward his weapon, every man at the table froze. The voice that came through was barely above a whisper, shaking so badly the words almost didn't form. "Mr. Moretti, this is Mia. I know I'm not supposed to call, I know the rules, but please, you have to come home, right now. The girl's voice broke. Before she destroys Sofia completely, please, sir. I'm begging you." Lorenzo was already standing, his chair scraping back across marble, the peace treaty forgotten. Because Lorenzo Moretti was a monster who'd built an empire on calculated violence and strategic cruelty. But he was also a father, and someone was hurting his daughter. What he would find when he kicked down his own door wasn't just abuse, it was betrayal that would burn his entire world to ash. 20 minutes earlier, the back room of Volkov's cigar lounge smelled like expensive tobacco, older money, and imminent bloodshed. Lorenzo Moretti sat at the head of the negotiating table, 34 years old, 6'3" of tailored Brioni suit, and barely restrained violence. His eyes were the color of winter storms, and his hands, folded calmly on the mahogany surface, had strangled 3 men before his 25th birthday. He didn't fidget, didn't blink, didn't show the Russians across from him anything except the cold certainty that he owned this room, this negotiation, and their survival. "You're asking for Brooklyn docks," Dmitry Volkov said, his accent thick, his hand resting near the bulge of a shoulder holster. "That territory has been Bratva for 15 years. That territory is mine when I say it's mine," Lorenzo replied, his voice a low baritone that didn't need volume to command obedience. "Right now, Dmitry, I'm saying you have nothing, unless you'd like to negotiate from a position of being dead." The tension spiked. Lorenzo's second-in-command, a scar-faced enforcer named Marcus, shifted weight, ready to draw. The Russians mirrored the movement. This was the moment, the razor's edge between handshake and massacre. Then the phone in Lorenzo's inner jacket pocket vibrated. Not his business phone, the encrypted device he used for territory disputes and contract hits. Not the burner he cycled through weekly. This was the private line. A sleek black smartphone with exactly 3 numbers programmed. His personal physician, his lawyer, and the Moretti estate in the Hamptons. The estate where his 6-year-old daughter lived behind security that rivaled federal witness protection. Lorenzo froze. He never froze. Volkov smiled, misreading the hesitation as fear. "Expecting call from your mother, Moretti." Lorenzo ignored him. His hand moved to the phone with mechanical precision, but his heart, usually a steady, cold machine, hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape. He swiped, brought it to his ear, and spoke one word. "Speak, Mr. Moretti." Mia's voice was trembling so hard she could barely form words. She sounded like she was hiding, whispering from inside a closet, or behind a locked door. I'm sorry, I know the rules. I know I'm not supposed to call unless. Why are you calling? Lorenzo's voice dropped to a register that made grown men confess to crimes they hadn't committed. "It's Miss Isabella, sir." Mia was crying now, trying to muffle the sound. She found out about the tutoring schedule. She asked why Sofia needed so many sessions, and when I wouldn't answer, she went to Sofia's room. Lorenzo stood so fast, his chair clattered backward. Marcus was already moving toward the door. "What is Isabella doing to my daughter? She locked me out, but I can hear them through the door." Mia's whisper cracked. "Sofia is crying, begging her to stop. Miss Isabella is saying terrible things, that Sofia is spoiled, that she needs to learn her place, that daughter should be seen and not heard, that..." Mia's voice broke completely. "Sir, she's hitting her. I can hear it. And Sofia keeps asking for you, and Miss Isabella keeps saying you don't care, that you'll never choose Sofia over business, that..." The sound of a child screaming came through the phone, high-pitched, terrified, broken. Lorenzo's daughter, screaming for him, while he sat in a cigar lounge, negotiating with Russians. "Please come home," Mia begged. "Please, Mr. Moretti, before she destroys her completely." The line went dead. The rage that erupted in Lorenzo Moretti wasn't the cold, calculated fury of a mafia boss. It was the primal, volcanic wrath of a father who just heard his child scream in terror. "Meeting over," Lorenzo snarled, already moving toward the door. "You do not walk away from me," Volkov roared, slamming his fist on the table. "We are not finished." Lorenzo turned, and whatever Volkov saw in his eyes made the Russian reach for his weapon. But Lorenzo was already gone, Marcus and his security team following. leaving the peace treaty in ruins and 43 potential deaths about to become 44. Because Lorenzo Moretti would burn down his entire empire, restart the bloodiest war in New York history, and sacrifice every alliance he'd ever built if it meant getting to his daughter before Isabella Cavallo destroyed her completely. The monster was going home, and God help anyone who stood in his way. Chapter 1. Mia Torres had been working at the Moretti estate for 6 months, and in that time she'd learned 3 essential rules. Stay invisible, never ask questions, and absolutely never call the private line unless someone was dying. The 4th rule, the unspoken one that every member of the household staff understood, was that Isabella Cavallo was untouchable. You didn't question her. You didn't contradict her. You definitely didn't interfere when she decided Sofia needed discipline. But this wasn't discipline. This was something else entirely. Mia stood frozen outside Sofia's bedroom, her hand pressed against the locked door, listening to the muffled sounds of a 6-year-old child begging, "Please, Isabella, I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. Please let me out. I don't like the dark. Please." The words dissolved into sobs that made Mia's stomach turn. "You'll stay in there until you learn respect." Isabella's voice came through clearly, cold and precise. "Your father spoils you. Someone needs to teach you that little girls should be seen, and not heard. Maybe a few hours in the dark will help you remember your place." Mia had watched Isabella's cruelty escalate over the past month. Meals withheld for minor infractions. Tutoring sessions were canceled as punishment for asking too many questions. Yesterday, Isabella had made Sofia stand in the corner for 3 hours, because the child had laughed too loudly during breakfast. Locking a 6-year-old in a dark closet, a child who'd been terrified of the dark since her mother died 2 years ago, crossed a line even Isabella's status couldn't protect. Mia knocked on the door. "Miss Cavallo, perhaps we could. The child is being disciplined," Isabella said from inside the room. "Return to your duties, Mia, unless you'd like to join her in the closet." Sofia's crying intensified. Mia, please don't leave me. It's dark and I can't breathe and..." "Quiet." Isabella's voice rose, and Mia heard the sound of something being thrown. Sofia's screaming became hysterical, the kind of terror that leaves permanent scars on young minds. Mia's hand trembled as she pulled out her phone. She'd seen the private line number once, written on a card in Mr. Moretti's study during her first week. She'd memorized it automatically, the way she memorized everything that might be important for survival. She'd never imagined she'd actually use it. The phone rang twice before Lorenzo answered. His voice was lethal, calm. "Speak. Mr. Moretti, this is Mia. I know I'm not supposed to call. I know the rules." Her voice broke as Sofia screamed again from behind the locked door. "It's Miss Isabella, sir." She locked Sofia in the closet. "The child is terrified of the dark, and she's been in there for over an hour, and I can hear her hyperventilating, and Isabella won't let me in." "Where are you?" Lorenzo's voice had changed completely. No longer the cold Mafia boss. Now something primal and dangerous. "Outside Sofia's bedroom, 2nd floor, East Wing." "Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do. The guards won't intervene, and Sofia keeps begging." Another scream. This one raw and broken, the sound of a child whose spirit was being systematically destroyed. "Please come home," Mia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Mr. Moretti, before she destroys her completely." The line went dead. Mia stood there, phone in her shaking hand, listening to Sofia's diminishing cries and knowing she'd either just saved the child or signed her own death warrant. In the Moretti household, there was no middle ground. Chapter 2. Lorenzo made the 40-minute drive from Manhattan to the Hamptons in 23 minutes, his Maserati pushing speeds that would have gotten anyone else arrested. His security team followed in 2 SUVs, struggling to keep pace with a man who'd just heard his daughter scream in terror. The peace treaty with the Russians was forgotten. The territorial disputes could wait. Everything could wait, except getting to Sofia. He didn't use the front entrance. He went straight through the service door that led directly to the East Wing staircase, taking the steps 3 at a time. His soldiers fanned out behind him, but Lorenzo barely registered their presence. All he could hear was the echo of that scream playing in his head, his daughter's voice begging someone to let her out of the dark. Mia was still standing outside Sofia's bedroom door when he arrived, her face tear-streaked, her hands pressed against the wood like she'd been trying to claw through it. She turned when she heard him, relief and terror warring in her expression. "Mr. Moretti, Lorenzo held up one hand, stepped back. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself. He kicked the door with enough force to splinter the frame, the lock giving way with a crack that echoed through the hallway. The door slammed open, revealing Isabella standing in the middle of the bedroom, perfectly composed in her Chanel dress and pearl earrings. She looked annoyed at the interruption, nothing more. "Lorenzo, darling, what a dramatic entrance," she said, smoothing her hair. I was just teaching your daughter some much-needed discipline. She's been terribly spoiled, and I thought. Lorenzo's eyes moved past her to the closet door. Still closed, still locked. He could hear Sophia's ragged breathing from inside, the hitching sobs of a child who'd cried herself past hysteria into exhausted terror. He walked past Isabella without a word, turned the closet lock, and pulled the door open. Sophia was huddled in the corner, her knees pulled to her chest, her face blotchy and swollen from crying. Her dress was torn where she'd apparently tried to claw her way out. When the light hit her face, she flinched, then looked up and saw her father. "Papa?" Lorenzo dropped to his knees, reaching for her. Sophia launched herself into his arms with a sob that shattered something fundamental in his chest. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered, her small hands fisting in his suit jacket like she was terrified he'd disappear. "It was so dark, Papa," she whispered against his shoulder. "I couldn't breathe. I called for you, but you didn't come, and she said you didn't care," she said. The words dissolved into incoherent crying. Lorenzo stood slowly, his daughter clinging to him, and turned to face Isabella. His expression was perfectly calm. That's what made it terrifying. "Lorenzo, you're being ridiculous," Isabella said, her mask starting to crack at the edges. She needed discipline. Children require structure, and clearly no one has been providing. "You locked my daughter in a closet." Lorenzo's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "You locked a 6-year-old child, who you know is terrified of the dark, in a closet for over an hour. While she screamed, while she begged, while she hyperventilated, she was being difficult. She's 6 years old." The roar came from nowhere, making Isabella step backward. "She's a child, Isabella. A child who lost her mother 2 years ago. A child who has nightmares about the dark. And you locked her in a fucking closet, like she was an animal being punished." Isabella's carefully constructed sympathy evaporated. Someone needed to teach her that she's not the center of the universe. "You coddle her, Lorenzo. You let her run wild, and it makes her weak. I was doing you a favor." "A favor?" Lorenzo's laugh was cold and ugly. "You were torturing my daughter because she wouldn't call you mother, because she won't accept you as a replacement for the woman you could never be." Isabella's face flushed with rage, and the mask finally, completely fell away. "That child is a spoiled brat who needs to learn her place. She's weak, she's clingy, and she's in the way. You want to build an empire, Lorenzo? You can't do that while playing nursemaid to a crying child who—" She didn't finish the sentence. Lorenzo's hand moved so fast, Isabella didn't see it coming. He grabbed her by the throat, not squeezing, just holding her in place with enough pressure to make his point clear. "Get out," he said quietly. "Get out of my house. Get out of my family. You have 1 hour to pack whatever you can carry, and then you're gone. If I ever see you near my daughter again, if I ever hear that you've spoken her name, I will make you disappear. Do you understand me?" Isabella clawed at his hand, her eyes wide with shock and fury. "You can't. The family's, our arrangement, is over." Lorenzo released her, stepping back. "Marcus, escort Miss Cavallo to her rooms. Make sure she leaves with nothing that belongs to this family. She gets her personal items, and nothing else. Lorenzo, you'll regret this." Isabella's voice rose to a shriek as Marcus moved forward. "My family won't accept this insult. You need this alliance. I need my daughter safe." Lorenzo turned his back on her, cradling Sophia against his chest. "That's the only thing I need. Everything else is negotiable." He walked out of the rooms, Sophia still shaking in his arms, leaving Isabella screaming threats behind him. Mia stood in the hallway, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Relief, fear, and something that might have been hope. "Thank you," Lorenzo said quietly as he passed her. "For calling." Mia nodded, unable to speak, watching the Mafia boss carry his traumatized daughter down the hallway like she was made of glass. Behind them, Isabella's screaming faded as security escorted her away, and the Moretti household collectively exhaled. The queen was dethroned, and everyone knew nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 3. Mia was packing her belongings in the servants' quarters, convinced she'd be fired, or worse for overstepping, when Lorenzo's head of security knocked on her door. Marcus stood in the narrow hallway, his scarred face unreadable, holding a keycard in his massive hand. "Mr. Moretti wants to see you in his study," Marcus said. Now, Mia's stomach dropped. This was it. The consequence for breaking the absolute rule, for interfering with Isabella, for calling the private line. She followed Marcus through the estate with trembling legs, past other staff members who wouldn't meet her eyes. Everyone knew what happened to people who displeased Lorenzo Moretti. The study was all dark wood and leather, the kind of room where men negotiated territorial disputes and ordered executions. Lorenzo stood by the window overlooking the grounds, still wearing the blood-spattered suit from whatever had happened with the Russians. He didn't turn when she entered. "Sophia is finally asleep," he said quietly. "The doctor gave her something to calm her down. She wouldn't let go of my hand for 2 hours." "I'm sorry, sir," Mia whispered. I didn't know what else to do. I know I broke the rules. You saved my daughter. Lorenzo turned, and his expression was nothing like she'd expected. Not anger. Something closer to exhaustion mixed with gratitude. Isabella has been escalating for weeks, hasn't she? The punishments, the isolation, the psychological torture. Mia nodded, unable to speak. And no one told me. Not the guards. Not the housekeepers. Not my security team who are paid to notice everything. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. But you, a maid who's been here 6 months, you risked your life to call me. Why? Because she's 6 years old, Mia said simply. And she was terrified. And someone needed to protect her. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment. Then he picked up a folder from his desk and handed it to her. This is your new contract. You're no longer working as household staff. As of today, you're Sophia's official guardian. You'll move from the servants' quarters to the room adjacent to Sophia's in the family wing. Your salary is being increased accordingly. Your job is singular. Keep my daughter safe. Mia stared at the folder, unable to process what was happening. Sir, I'm not qualified. I don't have training in childcare or security, or you have something better than training. Lorenzo's voice was firm. You have compassion. You see Sophia as a person, not as leverage or inheritance, or an inconvenience. That's what she needs right now. Someone who actually cares whether she lives or dies. But the other families, Mia said, thinking of Isabella's screamed threats. They'll see this as weakness. Elevating a servant to, let them. Lorenzo's smile was cold. I've spent years building alliances by sacrificing what matters. My daughter almost paid the price for that. I'm done negotiating with people who see children as bargaining chips. He handed her a key card, the one Marcus had been holding. This gives you access to every room in this house except my private office and the armory. You answer to no one except me, not security, not staff, not family members who might decide to visit. His eyes hardened. Protect her, Mia, from everyone, including me if necessary. The weight of those words hung between them. Lorenzo Moretti, the man who ruled New York's underworld with calculated violence, was admitting he might be a danger to his own daughter. That his world, his choices, his enemies could destroy her. I will, Mia said quietly. I promise. By evening, word had spread through the household. The maid who'd called the private line wasn't just alive. She'd been promoted to a position that placed her above veteran staff members who'd served the Moretti family for decades. Reactions varied wildly. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, regarded Mia with cold suspicion when she came to help move her belongings. You think calling the boss makes you special? This family eats people like you for breakfast. You'll be gone in a month. But Miguel, the estate's longtime chef, pulled her aside in the hallway. You did good, Mija, he said quietly. That little girl needed someone brave enough to speak up. Don't let them make you doubt that. The security team was split. Some saw her as an interloper who'd gotten lucky. Others, like Marcus, who'd watched Lorenzo kick down that door, treated her with new respect. She'd done what they'd failed to do, put Sophia's safety above their own survival. Mia's new room was 10 times the size of her old quarters, with an adjoining door to Sophia's bedroom and windows overlooking the estate gardens. It felt wrong, being here in the family wing, sleeping in a bed that cost more than her previous year's salary. But when she opened the adjoining door and saw Sophia curled up in her bed, still shaking occasionally even in sleep, Mia understood why Lorenzo had done this. Sophia needed someone close, someone who would hear if she had nightmares, someone who'd chosen to protect her when it cost everything. My father taught me tactical thinking, Mia said, setting Sophia down behind the desk and pulling the child close. He used to quiz me on building layouts, firing angles, how to read an assault pattern. I thought he was paranoid, but she flinched as another window exploded. There are 6 shooters, 3 in the garden, 2 on the east perimeter, 1 elevated position, probably the gardener's shed roof. They're using Isabella's schedules. They knew you'd be in this room at this time. Lorenzo stared at her. Marcus Torres's daughter wasn't just brave. She'd been trained, educated in the same survival skills her father had mastered. The service corridor, Mia continued, her mind working faster than the bullets flying outside. It's not on the main blueprints, because it was added during renovations 5 years ago. Isabella wouldn't know about it. If we can reach the kitchen, we can access the corridor and get to the panic room without exposing ourselves. That's 30 feet of open hallway, Marcus said. Not if we use smoke cover. Mia pointed to the fire suppression system that had activated from the explosion. The system pumps suppressant through the vents. If we trigger a manual override in the adjacent room, it'll flood the hallway. Not enough to put out a fire, but enough to obscure their sightlines for maybe 20 seconds. Lorenzo looked at Marcus, who nodded slowly. It could work. Sophia, baby, I need you to hold onto my back and don't let go, Mia said, positioning the terrified child. Close your eyes. Don't open them until I tell you we're safe. She moved like someone who'd run these drills before, even if only in training. Marcus triggered the override. White suppressant foam flooded the hallway, obscuring the windows, buying them precious seconds. Mia ran first with Sophia, low and fast. Lorenzo and Marcus followed, laying down, covering fire. They made it to the kitchen, as the shooters adjusted their positions. Another 20 feet to the service corridor, then safety. The panic room was reinforced steel, designed to withstand siege. If they could just... A shooter appeared in the doorway. Young, professional, weapon trained on Lorenzo's center mass. Time slowed. Lorenzo was too far away, his weapons still rising. This was it. Isabella's revenge, delivered by Viper hands. Mia grabbed a cast-iron skillet from the counter and swung with everything she had. The impact caught the shooter across the temple, dropping him instantly. She stood over his unconscious body, panting, skillet still raised, looking shocked at her own violence. "Move," Marcus shouted, and they ran. The panic room door sealed behind them with a hydraulic hiss. Sophia was crying. Alarms screamed throughout the estate. Lorenzo's security team was mobilizing, but the immediate threat was neutralized. They were safe, at least for now. Lorenzo looked at Mia, Marcus Torres's daughter, who'd just saved his life using skills her father had taught her, who'd protected Sophia while thinking tactically under fire, who'd knocked out an armed assassin with kitchen equipment, and looked horrified at her own capability. "Your father," Lorenzo said quietly, "would be so fucking proud of you right now." Mia's laugh was shaky, almost hysterical. "I hit him with a frying pan." "You saved my life with a frying pan," Lorenzo corrected. He pulled her and Sophia close, his heart still hammering, understanding, crystallizing. Mia wasn't just kind. She wasn't just brave. She was capable, trained, intelligent, everything her father had been, hidden beneath years of trying to be invisible. And Isabella had just made a fatal mistake, because now Lorenzo knew what he was dealing with. The Vipers wanted war, and they'd just attacked his family. Some mistakes, Lorenzo thought as he held his daughter and the woman who'd saved them both. You don't get to survive. Chapter 6. 3 weeks after the assassination attempt, life at the Moretti estate had settled into a new rhythm. Tense, vigilant, but functional. Sophia's nightmares had decreased from nightly to occasional. Security had been tripled, and Mia had moved from sleeping in the chair beside Sophia's bed to actually using her own room, though she kept the adjoining door open, and woke at the slightest sound. Tonight, Sophia had asked Mia to stay until she fell asleep. A thunderstorm raged outside, and despite all the therapy and reassurance, the little girl still struggled with darkness and loud noises. Mia sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers through Sophia's hair, singing softly, a lullaby her own mother used to sing, passed down through generations of Torres women. "Mia," Sophia's voice was drowsy, half asleep. "I'm here, baby. Will you stay, all night?" "Of course. I'm not going anywhere." Sophia's small hand found Mia's, gripping tight. "Promise?" "I promise." "Good." Sophia's eyes were already closing, her breathing evening out. "Love you, mama." The word hung in the air like something physical. Sophia didn't seem to realize what she'd said, already drifting into sleep, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been since before Isabella. But Mia felt the word lodge in her chest like a bullet, painful and permanent and utterly transformative. "Mama." Not Mia, not Miss Torres. "Mama." Mia's hand trembled as she continued stroking Sophia's hair, tears streaming silently down her face. She'd been caring for this child for less than a month, and already Sophia had claimed her, had given her the title that meant trust and safety and forever. The weight of it was crushing and beautiful simultaneously. She didn't hear Lorenzo enter until he spoke from the doorway, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's been calling you that in her sleep for a week." Tonight was the first time she said it out loud. Mia turned, wiping her face quickly. Lorenzo stood in the shadows, still in his work clothes, looking exhausted and raw, in a way she'd never seen him. Not the Mafia boss, just a father watching his daughter heal because of someone else's love. "I'm sorry," Mia said automatically. "I didn't encourage it. I never tried to replace. Don't apologize." Lorenzo moved closer, his footsteps silent on the carpet. "Her mother died when she was 4. Sophia barely remembers her. For 2 years she had no one except me, and I was too busy building empires to notice she was drowning. Then Isabella came and systematically tried to break her." He looked at his sleeping daughter, his expression unguarded. "You gave her back something I didn't think she'd ever have again. Someone who puts her first. Someone who chose her." "She's easy to love," Mia whispered. "Is she?" Lorenzo's gaze shifted to Mia. "Or are you just the kind of person who sees children as human beings instead of leverage?" They stood there in the dim room, Sophia sleeping peacefully between them, and something shifted. The air felt charged, dangerous in a completely different way than bullets and explosions. "Come with me," Lorenzo said quietly. She's asleep. We need to talk. Mia followed him to the library, a room she'd only cleaned before, never been invited to occupy. Lorenzo poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if she wanted one, handed her one, and sat in the chair across from her. The rain hammered against the windows, providing white noise and privacy. I never wanted this life for her, Lorenzo said, staring into his glass. When Maria, Sophia's mother, died, I promised myself I'd keep Sophia separate from the business. She'd grow up normal, safe, ignorant of what I really do. Then reality hit. You can't keep the daughter of a mafia boss safe by pretending she's normal. You keep her safe by teaching her to survive in a world that wants to use her as leverage. Is that what your father did? Mia asked. Taught you to survive. My father taught me that power is the only thing that matters. That weakness gets you killed. That love is a liability, because it gives your enemies targets. Lorenzo's laugh was bitter. He died believing that. Died alone because he'd pushed away everyone who actually cared about him, in favor of people who feared him. And you don't want that for Sophia. I don't want that for myself. Lorenzo met her eyes. I spent years building the same empire, making the same choices, becoming the same man. Then Sophia called for me from inside that closet, and I realized I'd become exactly what I swore I'd never be. A father who chose power over his child. Mia sipped her whiskey, feeling it burn down her throat. My father chose your life over his own. My mother never forgave him for that. She spent 8 years telling me that loyalty to violent men gets good people killed. She looked at Lorenzo. But you're not what she described. You're not just a monster. You're a father who drove 90 miles an hour because his daughter was scared. A man who threw away a peace treaty to kick down a door. You're capable of terrible things, but you're also capable of love. Those things can coexist. Can they? Lorenzo leaned forward. Can good people exist in bad worlds, Mia? Or do bad worlds eventually corrupt everyone? I think good people try to make bad worlds better, Mia said quietly. Even when it's terrifying. Even when it costs them everything. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. Lorenzo stood, crossing the space between them, and Mia's breath caught as he knelt in front of her chair, bringing them eye to eye. I'm falling for you, he said, the words rough and unpracticed. I don't know when it started. Maybe when you called that phone. Maybe when you hit an assassin with a frying pan. Maybe when I watched you sing my daughter to sleep. But it's happening, and I don't know how to stop it. Mia's heart hammered against her ribs. Lorenzo, I know it's complicated. I know you work for me, that there's a power imbalance, that my world is dangerous and you've already lost your father to it. I know all the reasons this is a terrible idea. His hand came up, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. But watching Sophia call you mama tonight, seeing how much you've changed her life, changed my life. I can't pretend anymore that this is just gratitude or respect. It's more, and it terrifies me. It should terrify you, Mia whispered, because it terrifies me too. Every time you leave for a meeting, I wonder if you'll come back. Every car that pulls up to the estate, I think it might be another attack. Loving people in your world means living with constant fear that they'll be taken away. Then we live with the fear, Lorenzo said. Together. Because the alternative is living without this, and I don't think I can do that anymore. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, to say no, to maintain the professional distance that had kept them safe. But Mia didn't pull away. She met him halfway, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat race beneath her palm. Their lips were inches apart when the alarm shrieked through the house. Lorenzo jerked back, instantly alert, his phone already out. Marcus's voice came through tense and urgent. Perimeter breach. Multiple hostiles. This is not a drill. Get to the panic room, now. Lorenzo was on his feet, weapon drawn from somewhere Mia hadn't seen him carrying it. Sophia. I'll get her. Mia was already moving, muscle memory from her father's training overriding fear. Go. I'll meet you at the panic room. Mia. Lorenzo caught her arm, his eyes desperate and fierce. What I said. I know. She met his gaze. Me too. Now go. They separated. Lorenzo heading toward the threat, while Mia ran toward Sophia, and the moment shattered like glass. Beautiful, and sharp, and impossible to put back together the same way. But the words had been said, the truth acknowledged. And whatever came next, whatever violence waited outside those walls, they would face it, knowing that something had fundamentally changed between them. Lorenzo Moretti was falling in love with his daughter's guardian. And Mia Torres, despite every lesson her mother had taught her about the cost of loving dangerous men, was falling right back. Some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. And neither of them wanted to try. Chapter 7. The power died at 2:17 a.m. No flickering warning, just instant darkness that swallowed the entire estate. Emergency lights should have kicked in within 3 seconds. They didn't. The backup generator should have roared to life. Silence. And in that silence, Mia heard the sound that made her blood freeze. Glass. Breaking. Multiple windows. Synchronized. Professional. She was out of bed before conscious thought. Her father's training taking over. First rule. Secure the principal. Sophia was already awake, sitting up in bed with wide, terrified eyes. The little girl had learned in the past month that darkness and breaking glass meant danger. Mama. Sophia's voice was small, trembling. Mia scooped her up without hesitation, wrapping Sophia's legs around her waist. Hold on tight, baby. Don't let go no matter what. Gunfire erupted downstairs. Not the sharp crack of pistols, but the sustained thunder of automatic weapons. Men shouting in Italian and English, coordinating assault patterns. This wasn't a hit. This was an invasion. Mia ran for the panic room, her bare feet silent on marble floors, taking the route she'd memorized during her father's drills. East hallway, service stairwell, through the wine cellar to the reinforced safe room Lorenzo had built after the last attempt on his life. 30 seconds if she ran. A lifetime if they were waiting. She made it to the stairwell before she heard them. Boots on marble, multiple hostiles, sweeping the second floor with tactical precision. They knew the layout. They knew where Sophia's room was. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Find the girl, a voice commanded. Female, cold, familiar. Lorenzo Moretti values nothing except his daughter. We take her. We own him. Isabella. Mia pressed Sophia's face against her shoulder, muffling the child's terrified breathing, and changed direction. The panic room was compromised. If Isabella had given them layouts, she'd given them everything. Mia needed somewhere Isabella didn't know about, somewhere added after her expulsion. The wine cellar. Lorenzo had mentioned during their almost kiss that he'd been renovating, adding a secondary vault for his most valuable collections. The work had been completed 2 weeks ago. Isabella wouldn't know. Mia ran through darkness, Sophia clinging to her like a lifeline, the sounds of warfare echoing through the estate. Automatic weapons. Grenades. Men screaming. This wasn't a surgical strike. This was meant to be overwhelming, brutal, final. She found the wine cellar entrance, pulled it open, and descended into blackness. Her hands found the new door by memory. Reinforced steel, biometric lock that Lorenzo had programmed with her fingerprint after the assassination attempt. Just in case, he'd said. If something happens, you get Sophia here. Nothing else matters. The lock recognized her thumb. The door opened with a hydraulic hiss. Mia shoved Sophia inside the small, fortified space, following and sealing them in. The vault went dark, silent, safe. Sophia was sobbing now, the kind of terrified crying that came from a child who'd learned too young that the world was dangerous. Where's Papa? Why aren't we with Papa? Your father is fighting, Mia whispered, holding Sophia close in the darkness. He's protecting us. He'll come when it's safe. But Mia didn't know if that was true, didn't know if Lorenzo was even alive. The assault had been coordinated, overwhelming. 40 soldiers, maybe more. Even with his security team, even with his skills, those were impossible odds. Above them, the war continued. Mia heard explosions, sustained gunfire, men dying. And through it all, one voice rising above the chaos, Isabella's, directing her soldiers with cold precision. Burn it down if you have to. I want Lorenzo Moretti and his brat daughter dead before sunrise. The Vipers are taking over, and the Moretti line ends tonight. Sophia whimpered, and Mia held her tighter. Shh, baby. We're safe here. Your papa built this place to keep us safe. But safe was relative. They had air for maybe 6 hours. Water, no food, no weapons, except Mia's body between Sophia and whatever came through that door. If Lorenzo fell, if his soldiers were overwhelmed, eventually the Vipers would find them. Eventually the vault would become a tomb, instead of a sanctuary. Mia pulled out her phone. No signal, but the light provided some comfort. Sophia's tear-streaked face looked up at her in the pale glow. Tell me a story, Mama. Like you do when I'm scared. So Mia told stories in the darkness, her voice steady despite her racing heart, spinning tales of brave princesses and protective dragons, while above them, Lorenzo Moretti fought through his own house like a man possessed. She told stories while men died, while her world burned, while she waited to find out if the man she'd almost kissed hours ago would survive to do it properly. And Sophia, exhausted by terror, eventually fell asleep in her arms. Mia held her in the darkness, listening to the muffled sounds of war, and prayed to whatever God protected men like her father and Lorenzo that morning would come. That the door would open, that Lorenzo would be standing there, alive and whole, ready to take his daughter home. Because some promises, like I'll protect her, and I'm falling for you, deserved a chance to be kept. Even in a world built on violence. Even when morning felt impossibly far away. Chapter 8. They'd been in the vault for 43 minutes, when the gunfire outside went silent. Not the silence of victory. The silence of a hunt winding down. Predators closing in on cornered prey. Mia held Sophia tighter, the little girl's face buried against her shoulder, her small body shaking with exhaustion and fear. "Mama, I'm scared," Sophia whispered for the 100th time. "I know, baby. I know." Mia kept her voice steady, kept singing the lullabies her father had sung to her, the same songs her grandmother had sung during wars in a different country, passed down through generations of Torres women who'd learned to be brave when the world turned violent. Then she heard it. Footsteps in the wine cellar, multiple sets, moving methodically, checking behind racks, searching. They'd cleared the rest of the house. Now they were hunting. "Check everything." Isabella's voice echoed down the stairs. "Lorenzo's security said he built something down here recently. Find it." Mia's blood went cold. She covered Sophia's mouth gently, pressing her finger to her own lips. Sophia nodded, understanding instantly. Silence meant survival. The child had learned that lesson too young, but it might save her life now. The footsteps came closer. Mia heard them testing doors, finding the vault entrance. Her hand moved to the emergency release, the one that would seal them in completely, but also cut off all air circulation. They'd have maybe 2 hours before oxygen became critical. But 2 hours was better than 2 minutes with bullets. "Here," a man's voice said. "Steel door, biometric lock. This is it. Blow it," Isabella commanded. Mia's heart stopped. The door was supposed to be impenetrable. Lorenzo had promised it could withstand anything short of military-grade explosives. But the Vipers had come prepared, and Isabella knew exactly what kind of defenses Lorenzo would install. The explosion was muffled but devastating. The reinforced door held for 3 seconds, then buckled inward with a screech of tortured metal. Smoke poured into the vault. Sophia screamed. Mia pulled her behind her body as the door crashed down, revealing 3 armed soldiers and Isabella standing behind them, backlit by emergency lighting, looking like an avenging angel in designer clothes spattered with blood. "Well," Isabella said, her smile cold and victorious. "The little princess and her pet maid. How convenient." One soldier moved forward, weapon trained on them. Young, professional, the kind of mercenary who killed for money without asking questions. His rifle swept from Mia to Sophia, calculating which target mattered more. "The child first," Isabella ordered. "Make it quick, then the maid, then we find Lorenzo, and show him what's left." The soldier's weapons centered on Sophia. 6 years old, traumatized, clinging to Mia's back, whimpering "mama" over and over like a prayer. The child who'd called her mama just hours ago, who'd fallen asleep feeling safe, who'd trusted that adults would protect her. Mia didn't think, didn't calculate odds or survival chances, didn't consider that she was unarmed, untrained in real combat, just a maid who'd hit one man with a frying pan and gotten lucky. She only knew one thing with absolute certainty. That bullet was not touching Sophia Moretti. She moved as the soldier's finger tightened on the trigger, threw herself sideways, putting her body between the weapon and the child, wrapping Sophia in her arms and turning her back to the gun, presenting the largest target possible, making the choice her father had made 8 years ago. The bullet hit her left shoulder, the impact spinning her but not dropping her. Pain exploded white-hot through her chest and down her arm. Sophia screamed. Mia's legs buckled, but she stayed upright through sheer will, stayed between the soldier and Sophia, blood soaking through her shirt and onto the child she was protecting. "Mama!" Sophia's scream was raw, terrified. "Mama, no!" The soldier raised his weapon again, this time for an execution shot. Center mass. Impossible to survive. Mia closed her eyes, held Sophia tighter, and accepted that this was how she died. Just like her father, protecting someone who mattered more than her own survival. "I love you, baby," Mia whispered to Sophia. "Don't be scared. Your papa will come." The gunshot was deafening in the confined space, but Mia didn't feel it. She opened her eyes to see the soldier dropping, a perfect hole in his forehead, his weapon clattering to the floor. Behind him, framed in the destroyed doorway, stood Lorenzo Moretti. He looked like something from a nightmare, covered in blood, some his, but most belonging to the men he'd killed getting here. His suit was shredded, his face was a mask of controlled fury, and in his hand, the gun that had just saved Mia's life, was still smoking. "Touch my family again," Lorenzo said, his voice lethal calm, "and I'll make sure you die screaming." He fired twice more. Both remaining soldiers dropped before they could react. Then his weapon swung to Isabella, who'd gone pale, backing away with her hands raised. "Lorenzo, please, we can negotiate." "Negotiate?" Lorenzo's laugh was ugly. "You brought an army into my home. You tried to kill my daughter. You shot the woman I love." He advanced on Isabella, each step deliberate. "There's nothing to negotiate. There's only consequence." But Mia barely heard him. The adrenaline was fading, shock setting in, blood loss making the world dim at the edges. Sophia was sobbing against her, saying, "Mama, don't leave me. Mama, please don't leave me," over and over. Mia tried to respond, tried to promise she'd stay, but her voice wouldn't work. Her legs finally gave out. Lorenzo caught her before she hit the ground, Sophia still clinging to her, both of them covered in Mia's blood. His face swam in and out of focus, his voice distant and urgent. Mia, stay with me. Marcus, get the medic now. Mia, look at me, stay awake. But darkness was pulling her under, warm and soft, despite the pain. The last thing Mia felt was Lorenzo's arms around her, and Sophia's small hand gripping hers. The last thing she heard was Lorenzo's voice, breaking with emotion she'd never heard from him before. Don't you dare die. Not after everything. Not now. Mia, please. Then nothing. Just darkness, and the distant echo of her father's lullabies, sung by a voice that sounded like home. Chapter 9. Mia woke to the sterile smell of hospital disinfectant, and the steady beep of monitors tracking her heartbeat. Her left shoulder was immobilized, wrapped in bandages that pulled with every shallow breath. Pain radiated through her chest, despite whatever drugs they'd given her. But she was alive. Somehow. Impossibly, she was alive. You're awake. Lorenzo's voice came from beside the bed, rough, with exhaustion. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him, still in his blood-soaked clothes from the siege, his face haggard, his eyes red-rimmed like he'd been crying or hadn't slept in days. Maybe both. Sophia, Mia croaked, her throat raw, is safe, unharmed, with Marcus and a security team that could repel a small army. Lorenzo leaned forward, his hand finding hers carefully, avoiding the IV lines. She hasn't stopped asking for you. Keep saying Mama got hurt saving me. She understands what you did. Mia's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't let him hurt her. I couldn't. I know. Lorenzo's voice broke. I know what you did. I saw it. I saw you take that bullet. Saw you stay standing even though you were bleeding. Saw you shield her with your body like... He stopped, swallowing hard. Like your father shielded me. The same courage. The same sacrifice. How many? Mia asked quietly. Vipers? 17 dead between the entrance and the wine cellar. Lorenzo's expression was grim. I went through them like they were paper. Every man who stood between me and my daughter, I killed. No hesitation, no mercy. He paused. Isabella tried to run when she saw me. I let Marcus handle her. She's in federal custody now, singing like a canary about Viper operations in exchange for witness protection. She'll spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, knowing the families she betrayed want her dead. And the Vipers? Broken. Their leadership is dead, or arrested. The families who were watching to see if I'd show weakness? Lorenzo's smile was cold. They learned that threatening my daughter is the fastest way to get erased from existence. I sent a message tonight. No one will forget it. Mia tried to sit up, winced at the pain. Lorenzo was immediately there, adjusting pillows, supporting her weight. His gentleness was startling, given the violence he'd just described. You died, he said quietly, once she was settled. In the ambulance. Your heart stopped for 47 seconds. The medics got you back, but... His hand tightened on hers. I faced down assassins, and rival families, and federal investigations. I've been shot, stabbed, nearly blown up. But watching them shock your heart, watching the monitors flatline, that was the most terrified I've ever been. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for taking a bullet, meant for my daughter. Lorenzo's voice was fierce. Don't apologize for being braver than anyone I've ever met. Don't apologize for making me realize that the only thing worth protecting in this world is family. He stood, pacing to the window, his back to her. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, measured. When your heart stopped, I made a promise. To God, to the universe, to your father's memory, to anyone who might be listening. I promised that if you survived, I would be worthy of your sacrifice. I would stop treating you like an employee or a convenient solution to my childcare problem. I would stop pretending this was professional respect instead of what it actually is. He turned back to face her. I love you, Mia. I'm in love with you. Not because you saved my daughter, though that would be reason enough. Not because you're Marcus Torres's daughter, though that legacy matters. I love you because you see Sophia as a person worth dying for. Because you hear her call you mama, and it makes you cry. Because you sang lullabies in a panic room while the world burned. Because you're good in ways I've forgotten how to be, and being near you makes me want to be better. Mia's tears were flowing freely now. Lorenzo. Let me finish. He moved back to her bedside, dropping to one knee despite his injuries. Despite the absurdity of proposing in a hospital room, while both of them were covered in bandages. I'm not asking you to be my girlfriend, or my partner, or whatever civilian term makes this sound less terrifying. I'm asking you to be my wife, to be Sophia's mother, legally, permanently, irrevocably, to rule beside me, not behind me, to help me build something better than the empire my father left me. He pulled a small box from his pocket, when he'd had time to get a ring, Mia couldn't imagine. This isn't a transaction. This isn't me buying your loyalty or rewarding your service. This is me asking the woman I love to marry me, knowing full well she could say no. Knowing she has every reason to say no. Knowing that my world is dangerous and violent, and killed her father. His voice softened. But also knowing that Sophia already calls you mama. And knowing that when I thought I'd lost you, nothing else mattered. Not territory, not power, not the empire. Just you. The ring was simple. Platinum band with a single diamond, elegant without being ostentatious. The kind of ring Marcus Torres might have chosen for the woman he loved, if he'd lived long enough. You're asking me to marry into the world that killed my father, Mia whispered. I'm asking you to help me change that world, Lorenzo corrected. To make it safer. To make it the kind of place where little girls like Sophia can grow up without learning to fear the dark. Where loyalty means protection, not sacrifice. Where family means love, not leverage. He met her eyes. I can't do that alone, Mia. I've tried. It doesn't work. But with you, with someone who sees people instead of assets, who protects instead of exploits, maybe we can build something my father never imagined. Something your father would have been proud to protect. Mia looked at this man, this monster who'd killed 17 people to reach his daughter. This father who'd kicked down doors and abandoned treaties. This broken human who'd cried over her coding heartbeat. She thought about Sophia, sleeping safely in Marcus's protection, calling for mama in her dreams. She thought about her own father, who'd taught her that some things were worth dying for, and her mother, who'd taught her that running kept you safe. But safety, Mia realized, wasn't the same as living. And love, real, terrifying, transformative love, was always worth the risk. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll be Sophia's mother. I'll help you build something better. Lorenzo's face transformed, relief and joy, and something like disbelief flooding his features. He slipped the ring onto her finger carefully, mindful of her injuries, then pressed his forehead to hers. Thank you, he breathed, for saying yes, for surviving, for loving my daughter, for loving me, even though I don't deserve it. You deserve it, Mia said firmly. You're not your father, Lorenzo. You're the man who came home when his daughter needed him. The man who elevated a maid, because she did the right thing. The man who's crying in a hospital room because someone he loves almost died. That man deserves love. He kissed her then, gentle, reverent, nothing like the almost kiss in the library. This was a promise. A beginning. A declaration that despite the violence, and loss and terror, they were choosing each other. Choosing family. Choosing to build something better. When they finally pulled apart, Lorenzo smiled, genuine and unguarded. Sophia's going to lose her mind when she finds out you're officially her mother now. We should probably tell her soon, Mia said, squeezing his hand. Before she hears it from the staff gossip chain. Tomorrow, Lorenzo promised. When the doctors clear you for visitors, we'll tell her together. He settled into the chair beside her bed, still holding her hand, looking like he had no intention of ever letting go. Get some rest. I'll be here. You need rest too, Mia pointed out, noting his injuries, his exhaustion. I'll rest when I know you're okay. Lorenzo's expression was stubborn, protective. I lost you for 47 seconds, Mia. I'm not letting you out of my sight, until I'm convinced you're not going anywhere. So Mia closed her eyes, letting the pain medication pull her towards sleep, comforted by Lorenzo's presence, and the ring on her finger, and the promise of morning. When Sophia would learn her mama wasn't just staying, she was family now. Permanent, and protected, and loved. In a world built on violence, they'd found something worth living for. And maybe, just maybe, that was how you changed everything. Chapter 10. The Hamptons estate had been transformed for the wedding. White roses and Italian silk draped across the gardens, string lights turning the lawn into something from a fairy tale. Security so tight that even the seagulls were being monitored. 6 weeks since the Viper siege. 6 weeks since Mia had taken a bullet for Sophia. 6 weeks of physical therapy, planning, and the entire underworld watching to see if Lorenzo Moretti had actually lost his mind. Marrying a maid. Elevating household staff to the position of wife and matriarch. The families were calling it everything from romantic to catastrophically weak. Dmitry Volkov had sent his regrets along with a case of vodka and a note that said simply, interesting choice. The Irish contingent was taking bets on how long the marriage would last. And the Italian old guard, Lorenzo's father's contemporaries, were muttering that this was exactly the kind of sentiment that got empires destroyed. Lorenzo didn't care. He stood at the altar in a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, Marcus beside him as best man, and waited for his bride with the same fierce focus he brought to territorial negotiations. The difference being that this time, he was fighting for something that mattered. The music changed. The guests stood. Russians in their severe suits, Italians in their old-world elegance, Irish mobsters looking uncomfortable in formal wear, federal agents disguised as distant cousins, and legitimate business associates who had no idea they were attending a mafia wedding, all of them turning to watch as the ceremony began. Sophia came first, 6 years old in a flower girl dress that made her look like a princess from one of Mia's bedtime stories. Her smile was radiant, genuine, the smile of a child who'd learned to feel safe again. She scattered white rose petals with careful precision, then took her place beside Lorenzo, reaching up to hold his hand. His daughter. His heart. The reason for everything. Then Mia appeared, and the entire crowd went silent. She wore custom Valentino, a gown that managed to be both elegant and understated, cream silk that flowed like water, lace sleeves covering the scar on her left shoulder where the bullet had torn through. Her dark hair was swept up, showing the Torres family necklace Lorenzo had recovered from her mother's belongings, a simple gold cross that had belonged to her grandmother. She carried white calla lilies, no veil, nothing to hide behind. Just Mia, walking toward Lorenzo with the same quiet courage she'd shown calling that phone, hitting an assassin with a frying pan, taking a bullet for a child who wasn't hers by blood, but was absolutely hers by choice. Lorenzo's throat tightened as she reached him. She looked nervous, overwhelmed by the weight of so many dangerous eyes, watching her transformation from invisible servant to visible queen. But when Sophia whispered, "You look beautiful, Mama," loud enough for the front rows to hear, Mia's smile steadied. This wasn't about impressing crime families, or proving worthiness. This was about the little girl who'd called her Mama and meant it. The officiant was a priest who'd known Lorenzo's father, who understood that this ceremony was both sacred and strategic. The vows were traditional: love, honor, cherish, in sickness and health. But there were additions, words that meant something specific in their world. Do you, Lorenzo Enzo Moretti, take Maria Guadalupe Torres to be your lawfully wedded wife, to protect and provide for, to stand beside in times of peace and war, to honor her counsel and guard her life as you would your own? I do. Lorenzo's voice carried across the lawn, firm and absolute. And do you, Maria Guadalupe Torres, take Lorenzo Enzo Moretti to be your lawfully wedded husband, to stand beside in times of peace and war, to counsel with wisdom and protect what he holds dear, to join your legacy with his and build a future worthy of both? Mia's voice was steady. I do. Then by the power vested in me, and witnessed by these families, I pronounce you husband and wife. What God has joined, let no man or organization separate. Lorenzo kissed his wife as the crowd erupted in applause that ranged from genuine happiness to calculated political approval. Sophia cheered, jumping up and down. And Mia, former maid, daughter of a loyal soldier, woman who'd taken a bullet protecting a child, became Mia Moretti, matriarch, mother, queen. The reception was a masterclass in power dynamics. The families came to pay respects, to assess, to judge whether Lorenzo had made a fatal mistake or a brilliant move. What they found was Mia, poised, gracious, speaking Italian with the old guard, Russian with the Volkovs, holding her own in conversations about territory and tradition, while simultaneously making sure Sophia's plate was full and she wasn't overwhelmed by the crowd. Your wife, Dmitry Volkov said to Lorenzo during dinner, vodka making him philosophical. She is not what I expected. No. Lorenzo watched Mia across the room, laughing at something Marcus's wife had said, one arm around Sophia. I expected someone trying to be like Isabella, performing power. Dmitry took another drink. But she is not performing. She is just herself. And somehow that is more intimidating. She makes people want to be loyal. That is rare gift. He was right. By the end of the night, the Irish contingent was joking with Mia about childhood in rough neighborhoods. The Italian wives were trading recipes and stories about managing difficult men. Even the federal agents seemed charmed despite themselves. Mia had done what Lorenzo never could. She'd made people see her as human first, position second. And in doing so, she'd made the Moretti family seem less like a criminal enterprise, and more like something worth protecting. As the reception wound down, Mia slipped away to the beach with Sophia, both of them barefoot in the sand. Formal clothes abandoned for the simple joy of ocean and moonlight. Lorenzo watched from the terrace, Marcus beside him. You did good, boss, Marcus said quietly. She's the real thing. I know. Lorenzo couldn't take his eyes off them. His wife and daughter building sandcastles and wedding clothes, Sophia's laughter carrying on the breeze. My father used to say that having things you love makes you weak, that enemies will use them against you. And he was wrong. Lorenzo's voice was firm. Having something worth protecting doesn't make you weak. It makes you terrifying. Because now I know exactly how far I'll go, what I'll sacrifice, who I'll destroy to keep them safe. Isabella and the Vipers learned that lesson. Anyone else who comes from my family will learn it too. Marcus nodded, understanding. Then, quieter. Marcus Torres would be proud, you know. His daughter. What she's become. What you've let her become. I didn't let her become anything, Lorenzo corrected. She was always this person. I just finally saw her. He walked down to the beach, joining his family in the sand. Sophia squealed when he picked her up, spinning her in circles. Mia laughed, the sound free and joyful, so different from the terrified whisper on that phone call 6 weeks ago. Having fun? Lorenzo asked, settling Sophia on his hip. The best day ever, Sophia declared. Because now Mama's really my mama forever, right? Forever, Mia confirmed, taking Lorenzo's free hand. No one can change that. Good. Sophia kissed them both. Because I love you, both of you. We're a real family now. We are, Lorenzo agreed, looking at his wife. This woman who'd transformed his world without trying, who'd shown him that strength wasn't just violence and control, but also compassion and courage. A real family. They stood there on the beach as the party continued behind them, the underworld celebrating or plotting or judging, but none of it mattered as much as this moment. Mia Moretti, née Torres, had become queen, not through fear or manipulation, but through the radical act of loving a broken child and a dangerous man. Lorenzo had become more human by letting someone see his vulnerability. And Sophia, sweet, traumatized Sophia, had finally found the safety she'd been seeking since her mother died. The maid had become queen, the monster had become human, and the broken child had finally found home. In a world built on violence and power, they'd discovered something stronger, family. Not the kind built on blood obligation or strategic alliance, but the kind chosen deliberately, protected fiercely, and loved without reservation. That was the real power. That was what would keep the Moretti Empire standing, long after Lorenzo's enemies had fallen. Not fear, not brutality, not calculated violence. Love, protection, family. The kind worth dying for, the kind worth living for, the kind that changed everything.